Hi folks, and welcome to In the Kitchen with Pete. Today we're going to learn a little bit about cast iron pan cooking and do some delicious pizzas. I've been using cast iron pan for years. They're great on the barbecue, great on the stove top, or in the oven. Today I'm going to be cooking some cast iron pizzas in the oven, but it's the same on the barbecue. One thing to remember when you're cooking it on the barbecue is don't put the cast iron pan right on the grill. Have a heat deflector in between it. And by a heat deflector, it could be just a simple piece of steel. Or you could use a second cast iron pan down on the grill, this on top. It works perfect. Otherwise, the pizza gets too brown on the bottom. You can also use, if you have a good solid shelf, you can put your cast iron pan up on the shelf as well. Now, as far as keeping these things tidy, I use a little bit of cooking spray. It's canola oil. Never use olive oil. It'll just gum them up and make a mess. Never use soap on them. A little bit of warm water, and if you need to scrape them, this little plastic item is very hard, but it's plastic, and you put the warm water in the pan, and if you have any little pieces stuck to it, you scrape it off, and you won't wreck your nice coating that you've spent years keeping nice and shiny like this one, and it makes it non-stick. So we're gonna need some pizza dough. I just buy this at my local grocery store, or I make my own. I'll leave the ingredients of my own pizza dough down below. It's simple. This here, you can keep it in the fridge for up to 2 weeks or freeze it. And I like to season my pizza dough with a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder. And another trick you're gonna need is cornmeal. I'll show you what to do with that. My first step is to get the oven preheated to 425 degrees. I'm going to get my cast iron pans in there as well, because we want those nice and hot before we get our pizza in them. Let's get to it. Let's get to the pizza dough. You want a nice flat surface, and you want to sprinkle a bit of flour on it. I use this fine sifted flour here because it's got a little dispenser on it. It's pretty handy. Be generous on the countertop. Prevents from a lot of sticking. A little on the hands. Now let's get our pizza dough out of this package. A little more flour on top. And we'll just work this around a little bit. And before we get it too mixed up, we're going to season it. A little bit of granulated garlic powder and onion powder. Why not put a little extra flavor in that dough? That's all it needs. This is going to be enough to make us 2 pizzas. I have a 12-inch cast iron pan and I have a 10-inch cast iron pan. So I'll cut this in, well, a little less than half on for one due to the smaller pan. Let's split this up into our 2 pizzas. And it takes some time. Just work this out until you get a nice little circle. You think it's not going to be big enough for the pan. Well, you just keep working it. It takes a while. Thin it out. This technique here works to start stretching it. No, you're not going to see me start flipping it over my head. I haven't quite got that one down. So it takes some time, but I got lots of it. And at some point here, we'll start using the roller. A couple toppings that I'm going to put on mine. I have a couple favorites. I like the good old standard pepperoni, mozzarella cheese, and a little fresh basil. But I also have another one. It's got prosciutto, sun-dried tomatoes, and not a tomato sauce. You're going to love that one. It's getting pretty close. And not to worry, if it's not perfectly round, you just push it up into the crust. It's easy. Okay, this one looks pretty good. I'll set that aside over here. And then we'll get to the next one. So my 2 cast iron pans are hot right out of the oven. Now here's the first step. Another little spray of our cooking spray. And here's a little trick, cornmeal. You want to put a light dusting on the bottom and you'll see how nice and easy our pizza will slide right out when it's done. That's all it takes, is a nice little sprinkle. So this is the smaller one here, 10-inch, into the hot pan. Be careful with your fingers. And then if it rises up the side, that's where you make your crust. Just pinch it down. And it'll make a beautiful little crust. Now for the bigger one, now we're not going to put our toppings on yet. You see, here's another little trick. We put this in the oven, 425 degrees, just the dough alone. The pizza crust. Now what this does, you ever had a pizza where it looks nice and that, but it's all wet inside? So this will help start the cooking process of the crust. We'll bring it back out and put our toppings on. So into the oven, 425 for 3 minutes. Okay, the pizza dough's fresh out of the oven, 3 minutes. Next, let's have some fun and dress these up. First thing is some tomato sauce. This is my homemade marinara sauce. If you want the recipe for that, you can find that on episode 116 on In the Kitchen with Pete. You put your favorite tomato sauce or pizza sauce. Marinara sauce is always a nice option. So we're going to keep this one pretty simple. Mozzarella cheese will be our next item. And I've cut them up in about 1/8 thick slices. You can shred it if you like. I just love the looks of this mozzarella cheese in chunks on the pizza like that. Next will be our pepperoni. I've done this pizza so many times, I know I need about 18 slices. It just works perfect. And you choose your own toppings. I mean, pizza's endless, right? But wait till you see my next pizza. That's a little more funkier than your typical one. But who doesn't like a good old pepperoni pizza? It's always a crowd favorite. And then I'll put a little bit of fresh basil on top. And then we'll finish that with fresh grated Parmesan. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Now, balsamic glaze. That's what we're using for our sauce on this one. I've done this one many times. It's always a big hit with friends and family. We do multiple different flavors. But this one, lots of people talk about how much they like this one. So I got a generous amount on there. Just use a spoon to cover the whole surface. And you can feel that dough, how it's firmed up just in those 3 minutes in the oven at 425. So next, we got our mozzarella cheese, of course, and then some very thinly sliced onions. The next item, one of my favorites, sun-dried tomatoes. They come in a jar packed in oil. I drained them, patted them dry a little bit. They're diced up julienne style. It's packed with flavor, these sun-dried tomatoes. And then the star of the show, prosciutto. And look at that. You know how they come in nice slices with the little papers in between? Well, I just pulled them off and put them into little clumps. Spread that around nicely. Oh man. Are you following me? And then a little bit of fresh basil. Now, I like to give it another little drizzle of balsamic glaze. Just kind of sprinkle it around. Gives some nice flavor. And then finish that with fresh Parmesan. Oh boy. $425, we'll get these back into the oven. It'll take 15 to 17 minutes. They'll be perfect. Well, I'm trying both of them here. I think I'll go in for the balsamic glaze with the prosciutto. Oh man, I love those flavors, and I think you're gonna love it too. Well, don't forget to subscribe to my videos. I put one out every Monday. Hit that little subscribe button down below and you'll get notified when I put out a new one. Well, thanks for coming out and watching In the Kitchen with Pete. Until next time, see ya!
Every day, having fun in the sun, being open for everyone.